on 938 Live. This is Talkback.
Are Singaporeans outsourcing filial piety to the government and to institutions or residential facilities? Now, last week, Minister for Social and Family Development Chan Chun Sing wrote on his Facebook page about a man who got his elderly parents to leave his house after they had lived with him and his 3 children for several years. When he got his new flat, he told his parents to get a rental flat through their Member of Parliament and to look after themselves. Mr. Chan had expressed his anger and sadness at the thought of the man not looking after his parents and passing that responsibility to society. Is this a trend where Singaporeans are shifting the responsibility of caring for their loved ones to others? Is this truly a rising trend? What then is the concept of filial piety? Perhaps it's been eroded over time, or is this a phenomenon due to a divergence in how people perceive how filial piety should be practiced? Call us on 669-11938. You can also start talking to us, of course, on Facebook, official 938 Live.
Now, in our Asian culture, children are expected to welcome their ailing parents into their homes instead of placing them in residential facilities such as nursing homes. That is being filial. But have we misunderstood filial piety? At an Economist Healthcare in Asia conference held in March this year, a speaker challenged the conventional wisdom of piety. And the speaker revealed results from a survey where seniors living with their children described their living situation as no choice. The children who were separately surveyed bemoaned their parents living with them as burdensome. So, no choice and burdensome, the speaker said, are terrible words in the context of acting upon filial piety. Sociologist Associate Professor Pauline Strawn has said that we have to be prepared to redefine the notion of filial piety, and she added that not living under one roof together should not be indicative of a lack of filial piety. Perhaps in more than a few cases, actually, parents do want to live with their children, but do not want to live with their children, but really have no choice because they are financially dependent on their kids. Also, children who act almost purely out of a sense of duty to house their parents do so, but then, they keep a deep-seated, unspoken resentment.
So, well, the fact is that going back to what Associate Professor Pauline Strawn said, that we have to be prepared to redefine the notion of filial piety. Indeed, just because you don't live together, it doesn't mean that you are not filial.
Right.
Some individuals want that independence. Some older people I've spoken to say, I would prefer to live on my own. Then I get to have my own privacy. My children get to have their own privacy with their families as well. But we see each other all the time and we're on really friendly terms. And the reason that Pauline Strawn brought this up was also in connection with a discussion on the development of nursing homes and retirement villages in Singapore. That some people see telling your parents to go live there, or if the parent makes the choice to go and live in other places, it's seen as being unfilial. So nursing homes and retirement villages perhaps even have a bad reputation, or they're seen as a stigma, on society.
Correct.
But really, if we broadened our notion of filial piety, that should not be the case. But in this particular case that we talked about, where the man told his parents to get a rental flat through their Member of Parliament, I think that's going a little too far. Because while you may not want to live with them, and they may not want to live with you, the least you could do is help them get those arrangements in order.
Absolutely.
Help them get the rental flat. Don't outsource it to the Member of Parliament. That is going a little too far. What do you think, though? We'd like to know. 669-11938 is our number. Looking at filial piety, what does it mean to you? Is a senior parent in an aged care facility constantly surrounded by peers and like-minded seniors under the watchful eye of trained health professionals less well off than another senior who is left alone all day in their children's home? How do we give our elders the choice and the space that they may need to be independent, yet make them feel like they are loved, secure, and cared for by their family? Emphasizing the importance of building strong family foundations where communication is open and the happiness of every individual, of course, is the concern of everyone. Call us on 669-11938. Recently, we talked about the HDB's schemes to encourage parents and children to live close to each other. They get extra grants, all sorts of benefits to do so, and in the future perhaps even more. But some of those surveyed said that they would like to live near their parents, maybe not in the same house as their parents, but near their parents, so that their parents can help them look after the children.
Same thing with the parents as well, saying that.
Okay, so the end result is that families get closer together.
True.
But would you want to live near your parents if your parents could not help you look after your children? Is it all rather based on utilitarian concerns? I wonder about that as
That's
well.
also dangerous. Well, joining us today is Associate Professor Tan En Se. He's from the Department of Sociology, and he's head of the Social Lab Institute of Policy Studies at the National University of Singapore. He's also a Families for Life Council member. Good morning, En Se. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning to all of you.
Now, En Se, with the spotlight being shown on the issue of people outsourcing filial piety, it does make one wonder if our family bonds are so fragile that we are even willing to pass on responsibility of caring for our loved ones to others. But is this truly the situation of our society at this point in time?
Well, I would say that if you ask people in a survey, right, they tend to give answers that reflect filial piety. But the practice may diverge from what they actually say, you know. I can't say for sure.
Well, first of all, explain what you think are answers that reflect filial piety. Because as we talked about earlier, perhaps we should redefine this notion of filial piety. What does it mean in practice, for instance?
Well, the way I define it is that it's about respect and honor for your parents. And I think perhaps more importantly is support for one's parents, you know. So it's respect, it's honor, but it's also support.
Sure.
That's how I define it. Yeah.
Okay, so you say that they might say one thing, but the practice is totally different in reality.
Yeah, we can never tell. I mean, the thing is that in a survey, you can always say, yes, I'll do that, and everything.
Yeah.
But in practice, you may not actually do it because you are confronted with maybe lack of resources, or maybe you have parents who are difficult, or maybe they haven't been in a good relationship with them over the years.
Right.
So that can cause people not to actually practice it.
Many factors indeed, and some of them could be understandable factors as well, right?
Well, presumably so, yes.
If we talked about it in the context of children saying that I can't live with you, I'll make arrangements for you to live elsewhere. Now, some people see that as a bad thing as well. That's being unfilial. But as you just mentioned, sometimes the circumstances don't allow for that sort of living together, for instance.
Well, I think the bottom line is whether people have the choice, you know, whether parents have the choice, or are they sort of coerced into a situation?
Yeah.
Similarly for the children, I mean, do they have a choice to whether to put up their parents or not, you know? So it boils down to choice. But I really think that the motivation shouldn't be that it is a duty, it is an obligation. I think the motivation should really be about love. When you love your parents, you will do anything for them.
Correct.
But when you're duty bound to do something, you may not.
Yeah.
Correct.
And at the first instance, when you have the chance, you try to,
Elak, as they say.
or siam or whatever.
That's
you call
right,
it.
yes.
Give us a call, 669-11938. Tell us how you feel about this situation. Alex joins us now. Hi, Alex.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Alex.
Yeah, I totally agree with the guest speaker. It's really a lot about the resources available to young couples, young families. We are no longer we are in a very different society from when we have a multi-extended family structure. That was like 20 years ago. We no longer see this type of structure. Our flats are getting smaller. We are getting more competitive. It's very difficult to house so many people in one place. And then, as for getting along, well, we all know that it's very difficult, especially if the in-laws and the wife can't get together, or vice versa. And personally, my father is a nice person, but has prone to, some temper tantrum occasionally, which is alien for my children and for my wife.
I totally understand, sir. Sometimes, the human relationship part of it is so complex that it may not be feasible or viable for people to live together. But in such a case, how then would you deal with the situation? Because in this particular case that we cited earlier, the man actually told his parents to get help from the Member of Parliament. Don't you think that to a great extent, even if you can't live together, you should support your parents through a process where they can find other ways of living in another place, for instance, that the child should still be involved in that process?
Well, put it this way, I will be getting older and my children will form family without me. Actually, if it were up to me, I prefer to live on my I prefer not to depend on my children. Then coming back to the case study where we are discussing, I don't see a very big deal. The fact that the son asked the parents to seek the MP help for assistance with a rental flat may not be an indicator that he's abandoning the father or the mother. It's more of a case of us utilizing our resources as citizens. What are the MP for? Because the HDB have a long waiting list for rental housing. It is difficult, and there's nothing wrong with seeking your MP for help. That's what they are there for.
Okay, but what are daughters and sons there for then?
The daughter and son will definitely not abandon their parents, but seeking a rental housing for the parents is actually viable option, especially if we can get it nearer to the family. If the government should consider it may be even more psychologically healthy for the all the family structure if we are able to have this option, to live apart but yet in close proximity to nurture and continue the family bonding. Nobody is coming out and saying, no, let's give up our parents. But the government must understand that through the HDB policy, the size restriction, the scarcity of land in Singapore, we are not, it's not practical.
Let me tell you about the HDB policy. I mean, you say it's not practical, but just recently we talked about this on Talkback as well. The HDB has schemes in place to facilitate the living near each other of parents and children, actually. For instance, they have 3-gen flats to encourage multiple generation families to live together. I do understand, though, that these larger than 5-room units have received a poor response among married couples with adult children. Parents prefer that the government give bigger grants and a higher priority for children to buy flats near them. And already they're getting a larger grant. So parents here do indicate that they want their independence and privacy, but want their kids nearby. And in fact, HDB policy does facilitate that, sir.
Yes, we does facilitate, but we must recognize the fact that all these schemes came in the last decade. It's not something that has been going on for the past 30 years. The message that, we live together and we support each other. It has been about...
Okay, thank you very much for that, sir. Really appreciate it. Let's give others a chance to speak here. We've got Peter joining us now. Hi, Peter. Good morning. I'm afraid we've lost Peter. Let's see if Mr. Ng is ready for us. Hi, Mr. Ng. Mr. Ng, are you there? Go ahead,
hello,
Mr. Ng.
My daughter abandoned us during her graduation, and after her graduation, she went in search of a new parent. She said that she was born in the wrong family. This is what irrespect of her daughter is.
What led to those circumstances, sir?
What led to those circumstances?
What led to her making those statements?
I still trying to figure out why she said that. No, because we had some quarrels before over this topic, Somehow I just couldn't understand. But then now she's now staying out. I chase out of the house because of this. Because it was getting too much.
So there were strained relations in this case. I'm so sorry to hear that. So thanks for sharing your story with us. We're talking today about filial piety. Clearly not all families are happy together. And what does that really mean, though, at the end of the day? Who should be supporting people who don't have the support of their family members? We'll talk to you in just a few moments. Stay with us on 938 Live. Minister for Social and Family Development Chan Chun Sing recently wrote on his Facebook page about a man who got his elderly parents to leave his house after they had lived with him and his 3 children for several years. When he got his new flat, he told his parents to get a rental flat through their Member of Parliament and to look look after themselves. Is there a trend where Singaporeans are shifting the responsibility of caring for their loved ones to others? What does this say about the concept of filial piety? Call us on 669-11938. Joining us in the studio today is Associate Professor Tan Eun Sir. He's from the Department of Sociology and head of the Social Lab at the Institute of Policy Studies at NUS. He's also a Families for Life Council member. Now, Professor Tan, let's respond to what our first caller, Alex, said. One of the things he said was that there is no harm in a child asking his parents to avail themselves of the resources that are available within society. For instance, go to the MP and ask for help. Why not? Why should the child be made to do everything? After all, he said, what are the MPs there for? To which, of course, I said, what are daughters and sons there for then? But what's your take on this situation? Does he have a point?
Well, my take is that I think we have been adopting this many helping hands approach, and I think that is a good approach. I think we need the country, the community, the families, and the individual to help one another and to help themselves, So
why rely on MPs and the government or other institutions for all your needs?
Well, I think we need to have the right attitude, that at the end of the day, of course, we are responsible for our families. But having said that, I really think that what is going on for a long time is that people do it out of duty, out of obligation. And I think we really need to change the basis of filial piety or why we support our parents. If our support is based on obligation, I think the chances are we are going to try to escape, try to outsource. So let's have the basis right. And I think the basis is about love. Once you love your parents, I think you do anything for them, regardless of how much time or how much capacity you have. And I think that when there is love, when the relationship is warm, I think it doesn't really matter if caregiving is outsourced. I'm sure the parents will understand.
Right.
You see, that's a broader definition, a more modern definition,
Yes,
perhaps.
sure.
But traditionally, as we were growing up, especially in Asian societies, looking after your parents indeed is seen as a duty. And if you don't do it, you're a bad person. Certainly, that's something that we need to look at in the way that we talk about filial piety.
I don't really know about the past, but I'm saying that under present-day context,
Right.
if you really want a strong, reliable basis for filial piety, I think you have to build up a warm, loving relationship between parents and children,
Yeah.
And once you have that, I think, if you don't have the capacity, I think it's okay to ask for help, including the MP. But that shouldn't be the first resort. You should try to use your own resources as much as possible.
Right. And if you need to get information for your parents in order for them to be able to find a rental home or whatever, why not just help them through that process so they don't feel completely abandoned. Also, behind every story of abandonment, there are two sides to it. And certainly we're sorry for the people who are calling in today to say that they feel abandoned by their children. But really, perhaps it's time to examine that relationship. What caused the strain? Why has it resulted in this situation? One more thing that has been brought up before is how parents outsource the care of their children these days, either to the grandparents, to the childcare center, or the domestic helper. So if you have a thought on that, we want to hear from you as well. 669-11938 is our number. Who's joining us now?
Okay, we've got Peter on the line. Hi, Peter.
Hey, hi, morning.
Thanks for holding on. Yeah, hi.
Hey, yeah.
You're on the air, Peter. Tell us how you feel.
I think filial piety we're going to start a lot earlier. Probably, like myself, I'm a parent. Also, I got my father is still with me. Things could start a lot earlier compared to, rather like after the 20, 30 years after they got married, then you start blaming each other, for not being filial enough to the parents also. Yeah.
What do you think of what Professor Tan mentioned earlier? How to talk about filial piety, how to frame that discussion. It should not be based on a sense of duty or obligation, but rather a sincere love and caring for each other. What do you think of that?
I think individually, if you use your own yardstick against other people's situation, like mentioned by the MP, after several years, then he decided to ask the father to ask the MP for help. I think it should be something happening. I can't take everything on the face value. It's very hard to judge other people's situation.
Good point, sir, because we really don't know what happened within that family. The question is, how do you deal with those strains that inevitably will come up in any situation? They come up within friendships, they come up within families as well. Do we have the coping mechanisms to deal with it? Richard joins us now. Let's speak with Richard first. Hi, Richard.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I feel some husbands, either knowingly or unknowingly, allow their other half to influence them on this matter. Sometimes they react to the commands or the body language of their other half. And also for parents, sometimes they also they make this situation worse for them because in the early days they may tell their children, no, I don't want to stay with you. I don't want to make things difficult for them. But deep down inside, I think they really want to be with their children. But so when the children take this at face value, and then later they say that, oh, you think my children are not filial. So I think these are probably some of the factors that contribute to this situation.
To what extent, sir, do you think that we should perhaps start redefining what filial piety really means in society? So just because you don't want to live in the same house as your parents, or if as parents you don't want to live in the same house as your children, it may not necessarily be indicative of eroding filial piety.
Yeah, I think maybe both parties have to be very frank and direct, which is something in the Asian culture we don't want to be too direct. We don't want to be too upfront. But I guess we have to, if we can look after our parents, we have to say we can. If we don't want to stay with our children, we have to really mean what we say. So that will avoid all these problems at a later stage.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. Really appreciate it. Let's discuss this for a moment. Now, Dr. Tan, what are your thoughts on Associate Professor Pauline Strawn's belief that we really have to be prepared to redefine that notion of filial piety to the extent that not living under one roof together should not be indicative of a lack of it? Now, you did say earlier it needs to be based on sincerity, authenticity, not so much on a sense of duty. But society looks at it this way, where if your kids don't want you to live with them, it is a reflection that they don't care about you. And as a result, a lot of older people don't come forth to seek help from other members of society when they're stuck in that situation.
Well, as I've said before, I think, to me, filial piety is really a byproduct of love, and I think for a long time, I think we are sort of barking out the wrong tree. We keep on thinking of it as an obligation, as a duty. And I think that is the cause of a lot of problems, People are so bound. Instead of having a strong family bonding, they feel that family is a bondage,
Which is dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, we shouldn't allow that to happen. But
once that happens, you definitely want to just break away.
Exactly. But if it has happened, then of course I think mediation, all kinds of family counseling ought to come in, But I'm saying that right from the start, if we get the basis right, all these problems wouldn't appear, I think families do face challenges. I mean, people have to work. There could be dual career families, and then parents could be sick, and so on and so forth. So there are challenges. I'm not trivializing those problems, But I would say that let's start with a very strong basis, which is to build very strong family that is joined together by strong bonds.
Before we talk about how that can be furthered in our society, I mentioned earlier how a lot of parents themselves these days are outsourcing the care of their children to other agencies, childcare centers, for instance, the domestic helper, or to the grandparents who might be there. What is this doing to the building of stronger family ties?
Well, I think, there are challenges. People have to work, the capacity for helping and caregiving is not always there, right?
That's true, yeah.
But I think it's okay to outsource. I mean, if you really need to make a living, by all means go and make a living. And if you need someone to take care of the kids, I think it's all right.
That economic reality has to be taken into account. But how do you make up for it, in a sense?
Well, I think people speak of quality time, people speak of family time. And I think if you really use those time with a lot of quality, you can still build that family bond, So
it sounds like common sense, right? I mean, clearly, it's common sense. I've heard this a million times, right?
Yes.
But still so hard for so many people to actually do on a daily basis. Tell us more about the challenges that you might be facing in this regard. We want to hear from you on 669-11938. Mr. Tan joins us.
Hi.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I just want to give my take on this concept of love and duty. I don't think these two concepts are separable, meaning you cannot have love without duty and vice versa. So I think
you could have duty without love, though.
Yes, I think to rely completely on love to discharge the duty of filial piety is completely an altruistic notion. So I think because of we have a lot of duties to our country, duties to our family, our children, so on and so forth. And because we have this sense of duty to be discharged, we will try our best to use whatever resources. But of course, in the case that you have mentioned, the use of our MP to get to the resources that we want, I think the MP definitely has the prerogative to decide where he thinks he can use his time best. And obviously, this is not the case.
You don't think that these things should be outsourced to the MP, yeah?
I think these are things that, on an individual basis, they can rely on their own resources. And as the speaker has mentioned, resource is a scarce commodity here. So I think we should use our resources in the most efficient way.
Thanks very much for that, Mr. Tan. Really appreciate it. Yeah, where do you draw the line when it comes to taking responsibility for your own family members, even if you don't get along with them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can always try and well, I mean, okay, interestingly, he said you sometimes cannot separate duty from love, but well, I mean, I guess different people have different strokes for different folks, so to speak. But
sociologically, Dr. Tan, we are changing in a huge way. You know, as the economy changes, as the demands on an individual change in regard to work, the demands on the family will change as well. And the construct of the family is more likely to change too. What do you foresee might be the challenges that lie ahead for a country like Singapore? And what do you think can be done in order to strengthen the strong foundations of a family in spite of all these changes?
I think it's to begin with the right attitude. I think, earlier one of the listeners said that, love and duty should go together, and I totally agree with him. It's just that we don't put the cart before the horse. I think let's start with love, and then filial piety and help and all those things are actually byproduct. So I would say that families ought to really spend time together, communicating, have the right attitude. Don't go about imposing obligations and duty. Go about building bonds of good relationship, and then allow that duty and obligation to be that byproduct.
Right.
So let's focus on the right thing and not on telling people what to do all the time.
Don't tell your kids, I'm your mother, you have to look after me. One way of doing it would be to also model good behavior. If that is what you expect from your children later on in your life, you need to treat your own parents well as well, so that they can observe good behavior.
And learn that from you.
Well, of course, I think parents can be good mentor, good example, and things like that, you see. But I think kids also can recognize that whether is there a bad relationship between the grandparents and the parents, And I'm sure they will learn that over time, it is about building that relationship. When there's an absence of good relationship, there are bad consequences. So I don't think the kids is going to say, our parents are treating their parents badly, and therefore we
should
do the same.
Because every individual is different. The dynamics of every relationship will be different.
Correct. I agree totally.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tan, for joining us today. Associate Professor Tan Eun Sir, from the Department of Sociology. He's also head of the Social Lab at the Institute of Policy Studies at NUS, and a Families for Life Council member. Now, if you have more thoughts on this, we'd love to hear from you on Facebook as well, Official 938 Live. Many thanks for your phone calls today.